Well, hi everyone, and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy. You know, most of the time on this channel, I look at science deniers with a sense of benign amusement, but occasionally it has to get serious, and this is one of those times. Now, you may recall this image over my right shoulder. This was the opening scene of one of my recent videos, and I did the introduction for this while I was on vacation in Miami Beach, Florida. This is the courtyard of the Harrison Hotel in Miami Beach. Sitting kitty-corner to me was a young Australian woman by the name of Irene. She heard me sign off from my brief recording session and looked over to me and said, "Are you a YouTube creator?" And I said, "Why, yes. Yes, I am." And that was the start of a rather interesting conversation between Irene and I. She was a very nice lady, but she was rather distraught. Her father had recently passed away, and I, of course, gave my condolences for that. And then she said, "You ought to do a video on what killed him." And I said, "Okay, what's going on?" She informed me that the Australian government had forced her father to get a COVID vaccination during the height of the pandemic. And as a result of that COVID vaccination, he developed hepatocellular carcinoma, which was discovered 2 weeks later in an advanced state, and he ended up succumbing from the disease. Now, this is not a person arguing that, the horizon looks flat to him or her. This is somebody that's recently undergone a tragedy in her family and was involved in a very extensive legal process with her stepmother over the estate, and she was quite distraught, so she needed to be handled very gently. And besides, she was a very nice and relatively intelligent woman with some strange ideas, and that was not the time to really go into them too much. But I had to ask myself, where did she get this information? Now, unbeknownst to her, I'm an internal medicine physician, and I've taken some interest in this, and I've been doing research for a series that I'm planning on launching on my alternate channel, ResearchFlatMoon. And that is going to be a full series on the pandemic profiteers. These 12 individuals that are in this photograph are responsible for between 65 and 70% of all anti-vax posts on social media, to include YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and others. So let's cue up the music and learn about the pandemic profiteers. The Center for Countering Digital Hate is a nonprofit based in the United Kingdom and in the United States. It is funded by philanthropic organizations and private donations. It is not funded by any industry or the government. It employs a worldwide network of researchers and digital media experts. On the front page of its website, you can see examples of the work that it does. It not only deals with vaccine disinformation, it also deals with things such as anti-Muslim, anti-Semitic, and anti-women hate speech, and a variety of other causes. You are more than welcome to have a look at this page. I'll put a link to it in the description, and you can actually download their reports, and those reports are very extensive and include extensive documentation of sources. So, for example, when we speak about the Disinformation Dozen, the pandemic profiteers that will be outlined in this series, when we talk about their profit motivations for putting out anti-vax information, we'll actually provide the tax information that their organizations file and their requests for relief in court action when they are deplatformed from some of these social media platforms. If money is discussed, we have the documentation to prove what is being said. This organization has put out 2 full reports on pandemic profiteers, an original report that was cited by the United States Congress in the crackdown on YouTube and other social media platforms, and the sequel. Both of these will be linked in the description, and you can download them and read them, including the sources, yourself. In the series, I'm going to go over each of the anti-vax proponents. The minor ones, probably 2 in an episode. The major ones are going to get an episode each. But let's just have a look at a couple of them. The top 3 anti-vax proponents are responsible for around 50% of all anti-vax propaganda on social media. The one that many of you are familiar with is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He is the son of Bobby Kennedy and the nephew of President John F. Kennedy. Prior to coming into the anti-vax community, he was an environmental lawyer and has no medical training. Now, of note, as chairman of the Children's Health Defense, he makes $255,000 per year from a nonprofit. That nonprofit employs 8 people and received more than $145,000 in pandemic payroll protection funds. Dale Bigtree, who is with the Informed Consent Action Network, earned $232,000, and they received $165,000 in pandemic payroll protection funds. Before we move on to number 1, let's look at an associated member that's worked with Dale Bigtree before. Yes, that's right. Our old friend, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, the former physician turned anti-vax filmmaker. Now, I addressed one of his projects in the past, the movie Vaxxed. Now, if you're interested in reviewing some of the disinformation from that monstrosity, you can look up my series on it. But by far, the most prolific pandemic profiteer is Joseph McCullough. His organization brought in nearly $8 million and employs nearly 160 people and took in $617,000 in pandemic payroll protection. But there's a very interesting quote that he gave Forbes magazine. Now, when questioned on the $617,000 he received from the federal government for pandemic payroll protection by Forbes magazine, Joseph McCullough responded as follows: "Nowhere on the Paycheck Protection Program loan application must you profess your underlying loyalty and adherence to vaccine propaganda." Now, the organizations that these people work for have brought in at least $36 million in support from donations that they solicit online and on social media. However, the biggest profiteer in this debacle is big tech. The social media posts and followers they generate are estimated to be worth $1.1 billion to the social media platforms. That may explain why Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube and other social media platforms are a little hesitant to clamp down on this vaccine disinformation. It's worth a lot of money to them. So if you'll be kind enough to go over to ResearchFlatMoon, the link will be in the description, drop them a sub and hit the bell icon so you get notified when these episodes come out. They'll be starting next week, and I'm looking forward to doing each and every one of them. This is Bob the Science Guy signing out from Northern Michigan, trying to do some good in this world. Thank you again for your support of this channel. See you soon.
Mama, please make them hear me, or I can't teach them anymore. This rabbit hole's too deep for